Welcome to The Kitchen Table, a show dedicated to helping you escape diet culture, gain trust with food, honor your body, and live a brighter life. Hello, and welcome back to The Kitchen Table. I am so glad you're here. I'm your host, Alicia Brown, an anti-diet registered dietitian nutritionist, and I am so excited. I have movement and posture specialist here with me today, Dr. Jill Zimmerman. She's going to talk to us about how we can feel more comfortable in our bodies to relieve stress and pain in our bodies without having to just resort to weight loss. Have you ever been to the doctor's office and you just get this recommendation right away? Either your BMI was off or you're getting this recommendation for weight loss and you're like, crap, I've tried that before. I have tried to lose weight before to relieve my pain. I need a different solution. I need a different solution to my pain and to feel more comfortable in my body as it is right now without that weight loss recommendation. If that's true, there are things that we can do to relieve the pain. And that's what Jill Zimmerman is here to talk with us about. And so thank you so much for being with me here today, Jill.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Can you explain to us how you got to where you are today, being a movement and posture specialist?
So my background is in physical therapy. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. And so I have done extensive coursework to learn how to work with people who are injured or who we are trying to prevent injuries in. And then I sort of decided to combine that with more of a fitness training background. So sort of making it a more wellness model in terms of how do we not only resolve injuries or potential injuries, but how do we make those gains stick by creating sort of a culture of movement and fitness in people's lives so that they continue to stay healthy and don't, injure themselves later down the road. So I work with everybody of all different ages, but I would say that most of the people who reach out to me are sort of in their 30s, 40s, 50s and later, in terms of what happens to your body as you get a little bit older, is you start to experience a few aches and pains here and there. And you realize that you can't move the same way that you did without sort of paying for it, if you will. And so people want to sort of continue to move and be healthy and make sure that they're doing so in a way that isn't creating further problems in their body. So that's kind of the people that tend to reach out to me. They're like, how do I do this better, basically, with less strain to my body?
And so it seems like your work right now is about longevity. You're not here for the fads. You're not here for the quick fix. Can you explain a little bit more about that? Kind of how you really view health to be something that's on a spectrum for the rest of our life, rather than this quick fix kind of modality that we often hear from social media and otherwise?
Yeah. So that's actually a really good way of describing it. I should use that for myself. But yeah, longevity is really where my focus is. So I always kind of I'm yes, I want to help you look better, but really that's not my primary goal. My primary goal is how do I help you feel better? And so that's sort of when I work with people, I'm not offering them sort of these kick your butt, you're crawling out the door, hate your life workouts. I'm working more towards restoring alignment and healthy positioning of the joints and the tissues in your body while you're actually exercising. So how do we exercise and do it in a way that's less stressful for our joints and our muscles in the process? Because that's truly what's going to make you be able to continue to move at the level that you want to without hurting. And that's a process, and it's something that has to be repeated and relearned in your body, because there's a lot of things that we do in our daily lives that pull us out of the alignment that is ideal for our bodies. And then if we, sitting at a desk or driving in our cars or looking down at our phones or, just feeling stressed out all day and sort of breathing in a shallow breathing pattern, and these type of things change the alignment in our bodies. And then we go and we move in that alignment that's not ideal. And that is when there's more stress and strain put on our tissues. So we have to learn how to bring our alignment back to normal so that we can move in that state and in that position where things move and feel really good and they move optimally.
Jill, I'm in this conversation with you sitting in this chair and I'm like, I gotta be in my good posture, bring my shoulders back. Even that like real life reminder, like for anybody who's listening right now, like, are you checking your posture? How are you sitting right now? Like even in our comfortable states, we can be out of alignment too, right? Or how do we get so out of alignment in our everydays,
There's a lot of different reasons. A lot of it is sort of just like habitual, learning like habitual movement patterns. So, how do I explain this? Like, just sort of like our bodies will take the path of least resistance whenever they can. Okay. So for example, if you like have to bend over and pick something up, like if your body has learned that when you, bend with your back, it's a little bit easier for you to get down to the floor versus being able to sort of like bend through your hips, then it's going to continue to do that. And sort of over time, that can create this imbalance of how you move and where you're putting different stresses on your body. So there's a lot of things that influence that, even just like if you sit a lot of the day, like your hip flexors in the front of your hips become sort of shortened over time. And this will affect the alignment of the rest of the body in one way or another. And then when you move, it affects it even more. So it's something that sometimes is not something you're doing. It's usually never anything you're doing on purpose or even anything that you can sort of recognize in your own body, because it sort of just becomes like your new normal. Mm-hmm. And so like whatever you feel in your body is your posture, and you think that's normal in your brain. Right. But when I look at you, I'm looking at you and saying, well, your rib cage is shifted forward, or your hips are dumped forward, or you're standing in your toes, or you're standing in your heels, or your head is forward, or your shoulders are forward, or your, whatever it might be, your ribs are flared. And so there's all these little things that are indicators that your body is living and breathing and surviving in a position that isn't optimal for all of the joints and the tissues. Okay. So when you posture in certain ways that are, a little bit out of what we would call lined up, you get sort of short tissues in certain places and overstretched tissues in other places. So for example, if your ribs flare and you're kind of dumping forward in your hips, your back is going to arch. So you're going to get like shorter muscles in your back, and you're going to get longer muscles in your front, like in your abdomen. And so this sets you up for having like an overstretched abdominal wall, which is going to be a weaker abdominal wall, a short and tight back muscles, which could cause compression or pain or things like that. It may or may not, but that's an alignment that you might live in all the time that is indicating to me that your tissues have experienced some sort of change outside of what we would call the normal like length. Okay. And whenever a muscle is out of its normal length, that means we have a muscle that's not working optimally and not supporting the body optimally, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. I am so intrigued by this. What makes the most sense is to feel the pain afterwards. So we live with, overstretched tissues and too short tissues for a long time. Of course, this leads to pain and discomfort. And like you're saying, of course, when we then say, okay, I want to be healthier, I got to go to the gym, and we just like run on the treadmill and we're not in alignment, we can, be more prone to injuries.
Right. So you're taking that body that's already got that little bit of compression in your back, and then you're adding like repetitive stress and repetitive load to it. And so you're adding like fuel to the fire in terms of like what your body's experiencing and feeling.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole idea, is like, how do we realign you so that you can move in a way that's less stressful on your tissues? You can load them, you can run on them, you can whatever you need to do without hurting so much.
You know what? This is bringing up a real big piece of clarity for me, because for you, what you're saying is like, the pain that you might be feeling might just be because your tissues of your body are out of alignment. You might have unnecessary stress on certain joints that are causing this pain, when really in that instance of, for this person that says, I want to be healthy, I'm going to go to the gym and run on the treadmill, that pain then comes back. It's like a feedback loop to their mind saying, or to my mind, because this was me at one time, thinking like, I'm so unhealthy. I'm out of shape. I don't have, I'm not able to do things the way that I used to be able to do things.
Right.
Rather than thinking about it from your approach of just saying, I think that some things are out of alignment. And once we get them back into alignment, you might have more of an ability to move and be flexible. Do you find that in your,
yeah, a lot of people say that when I start sort of bringing some awareness to the fact that, they're sort of out of alignment, they're, they almost immediately jump to like this, oh my God, like I'm so messed up. Like, how did I get this messed up? Like, how did I get here? Like I'm screwed my whole body up. And really like everything they're experiencing is very normal. It happens to like everybody. This is why I work with so many people to try to help them with this, but everybody sort of jumps to this, like, this is my fault. And it's really like, it's not at all. It's just your body's taking the easiest route and the easiest way it knows how, and so we just have to change that route, right? We have to make the weaker muscles stronger so you can take a different path, because you're always going to rely on your stronger muscles, and your weak ones will stay weaker and your stronger ones will stay stronger if you stay in that alignment you're in. If you change your alignment, the weaker ones start to build strength, and the ones that are getting overworked, overactive get to take a little bit of a break, and everything becomes much more balanced. And it's what we call sort of like working on muscle imbalances is sort of what I do, is like, where do I figure out what's working and what's not, and create more balance in the entire system. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like it's what we call a biomechanical model. You're looking at, if you look at the body as sort of like this machine or the mechanics and like how all the parts kind of work together, that's sort of what we're trying to make sense of and to align up.
Yeah. What happens when, so say like we go to the gym and we're doing like that repetitive stress, if our tissues aren't really in alignment, if our body isn't in alignment, and we're putting stress on our body with exercise, and we just say, okay, push through the pain, just push through the pain. It'll get better. If I just run on the treadmill more, this will get better. Is there like a consequence to that? If we just try to push through the pain rather than.
Well, you're not really you're not really addressing the problem, right? So like if your knees hurt when you run, like there's a strength imbalance there. There's something in the way, either the way that you're running the technique or a strength imbalance that's creating that problem. So continuing to do that, what am I trying to say? Continuing to run on it like that isn't going to fix it. So what I really encourage people to do is to consider building real strength in their body, especially if they're interested in doing cardio. So like, I don't do a lot of cardio in my practice. Like I just don't think that it's going to help people feel better. And you have to be able to feel good before you can even go and do that cardio. So we focus a lot on, like I said, building strength in the right areas to restore that alignment so that somebody can go and do their cardio or whatever, if their goal is to sort of lose weight, that calorie burning type exercise, they need to feel better first before they do it. So that's kind of like my solution to that, is like, if it hurts, then you need strength somewhere, and you need somebody to help you figure out where that strength needs to come from.
Mm-hmm. Do you think a lot of people just like live and tolerate a lot of discomfort in their lives, like in their bodies?
Yes. Yes, they do. A lot. I think pain is so interesting because I look at pain isn't just like mechanical. Like there's a lot of different psychosocial, there's lots of different behavioral things that go into like your experience of pain, neurological, those type of things. And pain science is a really interesting thing, but people experience pain very differently. People sort of have different thresholds, and people live with pain for a long, long time and just sort of like forget about it almost because it's just something that they're so used to, and they don't even realize sometimes that they hurt until you start sort of bringing it to their attention. All the time. And people of all different sizes. And so that's really huge for me because it's one of those things that I see a lot of doctors sort of be like, yeah, well, your knees hurt. Yeah. So you probably have to lose like 30 pounds and then your knees won't hurt. And I'm like, yeah, but that's still not like that's one of the contributing factors. We know that, but it's not the root cause. The root cause is that this person is not in alignment and they're not strong in the right areas. And they could be strong if they had someone to figure out what they needed to do. So that's my primary focus is if you get people stronger and feeling better, then they can move better. And if they can move better, then they can lose weight. And they're more motivated to lose weight because they don't hurt all the time. So that's sort of the idea there. Is fix that first. And to be honest, putting on muscle and doing strength training is going to burn a ton of calories, and you're going to lose and improve your metabolism and lose weight that way. So really it's a win-win to get started building sort of a solid foundation first before you get into the more cardio. That's why, like, when I watch that show, like The Biggest Loser, I would get like so mad because they just be like doing like cardio like all the time. And I'm like, that is not going to help. Like, they're only going to hurt so much worse after that. Anyway, don't get me started on that show.
Talk about fads, right? Like that's
unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And they've actually ran studies on that show that years after, many of the participants gained back more weight than they had ever lost. And so, of course, not only is there the regain of the weight, there's regain of the weight and more. Dieting is just the constant predictor of weight gain. So I see what you're saying of like, feeling empathy for the people that, that go into the doctor's office and get this recommendation for weight loss when, from my perspective as an anti-diet dietitian, I'm like, oh, no. Like, see weight loss here, if we just like restrict their calorie intake and, we manipulate their exercise, like this won't be sustainable, and this isn't proven for the course of time that like they'll be able to, ethically, and sustainably lose this weight and keep it off. There has to be a way to unlearn that through intuitive eating. And that's my practice. And I love how you take that same situation from your perspective and say, actually, like the first step would be getting back into an alignment, their whole body back into alignment before they can move safely and comfortably.
Right. So it's sort of it's like you're talking about sort of like with your intuitive eating, kind of like, it's like hitting the reset button. It's like, how do we get you back to like your baseline? Yes. And then have you start moving again from there. And I do a lot with breathing because breathing, our body, when I talked about earlier, like taking the path of least resistance, like our body's like number one goal is to like stay alive, right? So like survival is like our brain's number one focus. And so breathing is always going to come first. It's always the priority in terms of like how your body is going to function. So the way that we breathe postures us in different ways. Okay. So if we live in kind of this like fight or flight mode where we're taking very shallow breaths and we don't know how to breathe deeply, it is going to create a posture of sort of this like chest up lifted, like ready to go, like I'm ready to fight the tiger kind of like roar type of thing. Okay. And you can imagine sort of like my chest is up, my ribs are flared, like I'm ready to like sprint. Right. And so you kind of live, if you think of like the inside of your body is kind of like positioned like that, but you either walk around like that where you're really extended and like ready to fight and your back hurts, or you find other ways to sort of like deal with that. So sometimes somebody's really up and lifted, but they drop their shoulders down and forward to sort of pull them back down so they don't appear that way. Right. So it's like all these like layers of compensation to adjust to the fact that we are just trying to breathe in any way that we know how. Okay. So if you don't address like how the breathing disrupted the alignment in the first place, you're not going to be able to pull that person back to where they need to be.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the way that we breathe shapes our posture.
Yes.
And our alignment.
Yes.
And if we focused on how our body can breathe with more ease, that can, like by then taking deeper breaths, even that alone can help change our posture.
Yeah. I mean, even like learning how to breathe diaphragmatically and allowing your rib cage to sort of naturally expand when you breathe, like all the way around. Like a lot of people don't actually like utilize their breathing system the way that they should. So this is so important because like when we talk about alignment, we talk about like the core, right? Like the core is huge in terms of fitness, like, and just stability of your spine and everything. The core isn't just like your abs, right? Like your core is your abdominal wall, your diaphragm, which is what muscle that you breathe with, and your pelvic floor, right? So like getting all of that synchronized is what creates your core. Okay. And if you're not addressing the breathing, your diaphragm and your breathing component of that, you are going to be unable to really generate a strong core, which is your support system, which is going to help support your spine and your joints and your hips and all that. So that's kind of what it comes down to for me. There's a lot that goes into it, but I'm really hoping that breathing becomes more of a focus. And I think it will actually because of COVID, because so many people are going to be experiencing long-term respiratory problems from this. So I do think there's going to be more science behind this, but I'm telling you, it's changed my practice because I would like help people, like overcome their injuries, like, strengthen their back or their shoulders or whatever, but it wouldn't always stick because they would leave my office and start and be stuck in the breathing pattern that they're stuck in, which is pulling them out of the alignment that I was trying to get them in the first place. So once I started fixing their breathing and the way that they're breathing, all of their alignment started to stick because you're never going to stay in a position you can't breathe in. So you have to relearn how to breathe in your new normal. So like your new intuitive posture, you have to learn how to breathe there. If you don't know how, you're never going to stay. If you can't stay there, then you can't move there. And so the first step is always learning how to breathe in your new posture. And then you can start to move in that new posture.
Do you have any tips or recommendations on like for somebody, even as they are right now, like myself, like I've done no work on my posture. I know that I hold Amelia more on one side. I got a 9-month-old daughter. I know my back is all, sometimes I go home, Jill, and maybe I should talk with you about this in a private session, but wow, my back, I'm like, this baby's going to break my back, So I even know like holding a baby, sitting a certain way. Like I know I'm definitely out of alignment, but even that said, is there anything that I can do or other people like myself can like right now in the body that they're in right now? How can we focus on breathing differently? Or do you have any tips on just like this breath work component on how we can?
Yeah,
better alignment.
One of the things that it's like super simple is to do, Michael Mullins actually taught me this, but it's like a 5-breath reset where you just, wherever you are, you just sit, or if you're lying down or whatever, you basically take a breath in through your nose and then you exhale and you let all the possible air like out of your body, like 100%, nice and slowly and gradually, just sort of like rationing out air as it comes out. And then once you feel like you're sort of at the bottom of the barrel there, you're going to feel your abs on the side start to kind of kick on a little bit. And if you hold those abs kind of tight a little bit as you take your next breath in through your nose, you're going to feel air kind of go into places that you might not have felt before. Okay. And if you don't, then you can kind of like adjust your pelvis, maybe your pelvis is tipped too far forward or tipped too far back. And you could kind of like play around with the angle of that and work on breathing in that different alignment and see if it feels any better.
My shoulders just pulled like way back doing that. Is that normal?
Like your shoulders opened up in the front?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, this is the whole thing. Like when you breathe like that, the intention is for your diaphragm to move, which is going to help open up your rib cage and all the way, like 360 degrees around. So your rib cage will open up. When your rib cage moves, when you inhale and then kind of comes back together when you exhale, which is what we want to see, it creates a good place for your shoulders to sit. Okay. If you don't ever expand your rib cage, say in the back of your your rib cage or the front of your rib cage, then your shoulders have to, they'll sort of like sit in a different place on your body. And when your shoulders sit in a different place on your body and you go and raise your arm overhead or you carry your baby or you're like carrying groceries or whatever, that can create strain. So one of the ways to create better alignment for your shoulders is to actually change the alignment of your rib cage through breath and filling. It's sort of like stretching from the inside, like filling your rib cage from the inside so your shoulders sit in a much nicer place.
My mind is completely blown right now.
Okay. Then I explained it. Okay.
It makes complete sense, but I never thought of it like that way. And even in something as basic as the way that we breathe every day, it shapes how we're able to function, move, breathe. And you're saying that like we are built for survival. And yes, like even from like a, intuitive eating biological standpoint, we talk about that too, about like how our body's here to protect us, our body's here to support us in the way that it feels is best. And at the same time, we can knock ourselves out of alignment by, in my case, following a diet or an exercise regime that doesn't feel like it fits for us. It feels too short term. It's something that we can't grasp. But in this, it's like, a returning back to ourselves into like you said, like hitting that reset and kind of coming back to maybe how we're supposed to inherently.
Yeah. And I think people do actually inherently know that. Like I hear this all the time. Like, they're used to going to these like big group fitness classes or watching like some, hotshot fitness, whatever, like do her classes online or whatever, like programs. And, they're doing these exercises and they're just like watching and copying whatever the person's doing. And they know it doesn't feel good in their body, but they're just doing what they think is right. And what, the fitness model is doing. And it's like, they know it's not good for their body because when I show them how to do the same exercise, just in a different alignment, because that's all I do. I'm not inventing any new exercises. I'm just saying, if you're going to do a row, let's do it in good alignment. If you're going to do a lunge, let's do it in good alignment, and teaching people what that is and how that feels and how to breathe there. And then they're like, God, it just feels so much better. Like, I feel like that's like what it's supposed to feel like. And all of a sudden they're like, I've never felt my glutes in this exercise. I've never felt my abs in this exercise. You're supposed to feel your abs with this? Like, I had no idea. And all of a sudden these muscles that they could never find or feel start kicking in. And that's when their body starts to feel better because they're creating that strength that they've just been like bypassing because they're just taking the path of least resistance.
And mimicking and doing what somebody else is doing without acknowledging or respecting maybe in some ways how their body is feeling.
Yeah, right. And a lot of times it's like they don't even know where else to go. They're just like, well, I know this doesn't feel good, but like, I don't know what program to do. Like, are there any, it's really hard, as to sort of navigate the fitness and nutrition industry in terms of like what's good and what's crap,
And really what I found, and it seems like you found a similar thing, is like what really is the truth is the thing that feels most at home in our own bodies. For us, intuitive eating is so much of like the, like we're peeling back all these layers of conditioning from diet culture and upbringing and rewards with food and, clean plate club and all of these things to get down to like, what does our body really want to eat? What does satisfaction feel like? What does hunger and fullness feel like? And how can we honor those things? And it seems like in your work too, it's like, wow, how can we cultivate that body attunement so that we can really honor and respect how our body feels and find that new positioning and alignment that feels like we're returning home to our bodies again.
Like none of it's like rocket science. It's not, none of it's like trendy or fad or like anything. Like it's just physics. Like I'm just trying to like get your body to line up and then show you how you can like get full range and strength of all of your joints in that new alignment. And that's the whole idea. It's just, I don't know how to explain it other than just, it is sort of, it's almost exactly what you're talking about with like the whole intuitive thing. It's just like, let's get your body back to like establishing what I call like a stacked state. So I'm just trying to stack your body so that everything works at ease, basically. Like you don't have to, no part of your body is having to try too hard and overdo it and overwork to compensate for other areas that aren't doing as much, you know? And so it's just like, how do we create that? And I think that's so true with what you're talking about, the, you know, like, let's just make eating like easy and so you don't have to think about it, you know?
Yes. Normalizing the experience. Absolutely. And we talk a lot about like embodiment and disembodiment, like being in an embodied state. Well, how difficult is it to be in an embodied state when we're feeling pain, when we're feeling out of alignment in bigger ways in our life and also inside in our life, right? Like the misalignment of our body tissues is almost just a reflection of the misalignment in other ways in life with our eating and relationships and otherwise. How can we get more aligned is like always the goal. And what
like it's so multifaceted because, you know, when you're sort of chicken or the egg, you know, when you're in these misaligned positions, it can actually make your body feel more anxiety and more stress because of the way that you are posturing. And when you get somebody out of that posture, all of a sudden they're like, wow, I feel better. I don't feel as stressed out. I don't feel like my heart's racing. I don't feel like, you know, it starts to change that kind of behavior too. So it comes full circle.
You see with correcting alignment, it improves individuals' mental health?
Well, yeah, because like when you're stuck in a position that's like fight or flight mode, for example, like if you are a shallow breather and you're always sort of like anxious, that sort of creates a posture, right, in your body. And just being in that posture generates more anxiety and feelings of stress. So it's sort of like, it's cyclical in that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when you're in that posture, your diaphragm can't function as easily. So if your diaphragm doesn't function as easily, there's something else that has to work to help you breathe, whether it be your neck muscles or your back muscles or whatever it is that's helping you to breathe, your hip flexor muscles. Something is there helping you to breathe better because your diaphragm is so positioned out of its alignment. Mm-hmm. Right? So if we pull the diaphragm back into its alignment, teach it how to work properly, all of those helpers that kind of throw you into that like stressful, anxious state get to calm down a little bit. Okay. So anytime you're like extended, like sort of like your back is arched and, you know, think of like a scared cat, you know, like they're actually that's not the right word, but like, I guess like cats kind of like will go either direction, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. But when you're flexed, right, and you're like fetal position, okay, like fetal position, you're like all curled up, that is actually going to be more of like a calming state. Okay, being more in like flexion, okay? Being more extended, like you look at like a gymnast and they like finish and they're like way up and their back is arched and their like chest is up. That's more of like an extended state or like a sympathetic state of like more like fight or flight. Because that gymnast is like, she's on, like she is.
All of her muscles are working. Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of like, you can see how people might posture in different ways and what that might say about them. And that's why, like, I never cue, like what you said before, like, I just want to open my shoulders up. I don't ever cue that anymore because that sort of like opens people up almost too much and they get stuck in this kind of like posture. And I'm like, that's not really where posture comes from. Like posture doesn't come from the shoulders. It comes from the feet. It comes from the pelvis. It comes from the pelvic floor, the abdominals. It really does come more from the foundation than it like from the bottom than it does from the top. The top is just making up for the fact that the bottom isn't where it's supposed to be. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It makes complete sense. so often like we're either mimicking the instructor or we're just doing what we're told, or we're just like, okay, pull your shoulders back. We're pulling our shoulders back when really it's like, how can we work deeper? How can it be more simple? And how does this feel in your body?
Yeah. And for me, like it really is, it's about lining up the rib cage with the pelvis. That's where it all starts. So if you're curious about like, if it's not from the head, like where is it? That's where it is how do we get those two pieces stacked up on top of each other parallel versus the ribs looking ahead of the pelvis. Or somebody, for example, you just had a baby, these like postpartum women, they tend to just like throw their hips forward and like hang in their hips. You know what I'm talking about? That like just hanging hips forward kind of posture. Like, and so like it's those little changes that happen with life that stick with you and create these other compensations later down the road. Maybe it doesn't hurt now, but then maybe you take that hips forward person and have them do, a certain exercise that their body can't do because they've lived in that hips forward posture for a period of time. And then they start experiencing pain. So that kind of thing. Or like you carry your kid on one hip all the time. I've had moms who've had 4+ kids and they're just like, so asymmetrical side to side because they've just developed that pattern of like holding the kid on the one side of the hip, or you always drive with like your left hand on the wheel and leaning to the right all the time, like those type of asymmetries. I always cross my right leg, or when I sleep, I let my right leg go off to the side, or, those type of like asymmetries you start to like take note of and realize that those are patterns that your body has sort of become comfortable with. And if you do it on the opposite side, you'll realize how uncomfortable it is to actually do it on the other side, that you know what I mean, to switch it.
Yep.
And that's how you realize that you're sort of living in this like imbalanced state.
And that brings like consciousness to the things that we've put on autopilot for so long. Like, oh, I've never paid attention to the way that I drive, the way that I sleep, the way that I hold my kids, like.
Or I like stand in my toes all the time, or I'm always in my heels, or I'm out on the outside of my feet, or like, there are all these little things that I lock my knees out all the time, a lot of people lock their knees out, and it's those type of things that you start to pick up on. And there are things that are sort of inhibiting people's ability to really get strong in the areas that they need to. They're just little pieces of the puzzle. It's a lot. I know. It's just throwing a lot at you.
I'm so fascinated by you and your work. And I keep bringing it back to like that like recommendation for weight loss is the solution to our pain. And it just seems so true that weight loss is not truly the most immediate solution for relief, for pain relief. It could be that we are just not in right alignment in our bodies. And that's something that we could focus on at any size.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, like if that was true, then only people who are overweight would have pain. And that's certainly not the case. Like everybody experiences pains and aches and pains in their bodies. And you can influence that without losing weight, actually. I mean, I have several clients who I've been working with for years and they haven't lost any weight. Okay. But they feel a heck of a lot better. They move a heck of a lot better. Their quality of life has completely changed.
Yes.
They, can hang, they can, these are people who, couldn't walk 2 blocks without hurting. And now, they're walking around New York City with their, their kids and grandkids, and so it's weight loss is still a goal for them. It's, but that's something that I don't do, and they are going to have to be ready to tackle that. But all I can do is help them on my end feel better so that that goal is more attainable, right? Because if you feel better, like we said before, if you feel better, you're going to move, and they do. And to be honest, they just mentally feel better because they can move.
Yes.
And they're comfortable in their own bodies because of that. They don't feel just like they're drowning all the time,
Amazing. That to me looks like health, that comfort, that ability to move, the kind of like new authority over their body and how it's moving as well. Kind of seems like that's just a really more embodied practice, more conscious practice.
There's a lot of confidence that comes with it. it's almost addicting too, because they also realize that when they stop kind of the consistency of moving in the right alignment, say they went on a trip or something and they come back a month later and they're like, yeah, I could definitely feel that I wasn't keeping up with what I needed to do. And like my body's starting to feel it again, because like I said, the body just starts creeping right back in if you don't, pay special attention to it. So recognizing that it's like intuitive eating. It's something that you have to continue to work on. It's and to maintain that sort of like reset button and that baseline.
Yeah. And it just takes that immense body attunement. I love that strengthening of like that mind body connection, the awareness of how we would like to move our bodies now so that we can feel like we can maintain that relief, that we don't feel the pain that we experienced before after we kind of stack ourselves in a way.
Yeah. And they're like, I don't want to go back to that. Yeah. It's amazing how quickly they see differences. People, I'll see somebody on like a virtual call online for one session and they're just like, oh my gosh, like, and I'll give them like 3 exercises to do. And they're just like, I can't believe this. I just feel so much better. So it's just like, it's taking concepts and then starting to like apply them to like everything that you do. And those are when the changes start to really happen. Like when they recognize, it's like awareness, like they just recognize, like, I can't believe I didn't realize I was standing like that. I can't believe my squats looked like that. I like had no idea. And then you start cleaning things up a little bit and they're like, wow, this just feels so much better. And it's like, your body just didn't know,
Just didn't know. So what I'm hearing from you is like, acknowledge the pain, normalize the pain, and address the pain, like become aware of it, acknowledge it, normalize it. Everyone has pain. And what are some basic things that we can do about it right now? And I love that approach. Do you have any like last advice for somebody who's kind of like tolerating a lot of pain right now? Maybe they've just tried to keep crushing it at the gym. They've tried eons of supplements. They've changed their diet. They've changed all these things, but they're kind of missing the boat when it comes to like alignment and posture. Where's like one place that they could start?
I guess like I always tell people to just start really like building that awareness piece, like starting to really recognize like your habits and your postural habits, I guess. Like I threw out a bunch of examples, but kind of start there, like, and start to understand your asymmetries, and really feel what's happening with your body versus just like knocking out as many repetitions as you can. So that's one of the other big things that I do with people, when they're doing, say they're following along on a fitness video or something like that. And I have no problems with people doing that, but I like to teach them how to do the exercise as well. And then I just say, slow it down. Like you don't have to keep up. When people do the same exercises in better alignment, they get so much more out of it. They burn more, they're sweating more, they're feeling more, and they hurt less. So it's, in the long run, it pays off to slow yourself down a little bit and learn how to move differently before you pick the speed back up again. And I think that that's where people, they don't want, it's like anything in life, like they don't want to slow down. They don't want to have to put like a little bit of harder work into it. They sort of want a quick fix. They want it to be over with as fast as possible. They don't want to have to think about it. And it doesn't work. That doesn't work. That's not how you're going to create permanent change. And so just sort of recognizing that if you really do want to get better, it's going to take some work. It's going to take thought. It's going to take purpose, intent. There's just a lot of things that I think from, mentally and psychologically have to be put in place first if you really want to make those kind of changes.
And they might need some additional mentorship or guidance as well. Can you share for everybody listening?
Yeah, there's tons of people out there, like myself included, who work with people like this. Like I do, an assessment, and I can do it virtually, and I obviously do it in person at my business, but like, let's look at you. Let's figure out where your imbalances are. Let's give you some tools to start recognizing that, start feeling those changes, start feeling what it feels like to be in a different alignment, to breathe in that alignment. and realize that when you do, that takes your pain away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that itself, that is like mind blowing to people. They're just like, I can't believe it. Like, I don't feel, it doesn't hurt there anymore. It doesn't feel tight all the time. It's not, there's no knots there anymore, you know, those type of things. So there are people like myself who do that. And so, you know, my I guess it's start following people on social media that actually like kind of know what they're talking about. Not to like toot my own horn, but like I have a lot of education behind this. Like I'm not trying to just sell somebody some like fad thing that like is going to make me money. Like I'm truly out there trying to help people and provide them with knowledge that is empowering for them. So that's the idea, is to just get somebody to help you at least initially. And then that's going to start you on your journey to like feeling better with movement.
Everyone is thinking like they need to be working with Jill right now. Everyone's like, oh, the pain that I'm feeling, gosh, if I was in more alignment, I could feel more ease. Can you share with everybody where they can find you? I know that they can go on Instagram, so whip out your phone right now. Jill's got like the best videos on her Instagram. I reached out to her because I loved her videos for a long time. And so she does a really great job of kind of like showing visually a little bit of like how you work with clients and how you kind of like shift people's bones differently. And so you can follow her on Instagram at Jill Zimmerman PT on Instagram. And can you share a little bit more about how somebody might be able to work with you?
Yeah. I mean, definitely follow my page. I give out like a ton of free information. So you'll learn. My whole purpose is to like help people learn more about their bodies, but be sort of like entertaining and fun at the same time.
You are fun. It is so fun. Yeah.
And then if you want to work with me, you know, I just send me a DM on the Instagram, or you can email me at info@perfectlyfitcharleston.com, and I can give you that information. But just reach out to me personally, because I schedule everything myself, because I want to make sure that I have it where I need it.
Fantastic. Jill, thank you so much for all the wisdom that you shared on the show today. And for everybody listening, yes, go follow Jill at Jill Zimmerman PT. And also don't forget, while you have your phone out, don't forget to rate and subscribe to the show as well, The Kitchen Table with Alicia Brown. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. And for everyone, we'll see you on Monday's episode. Have a good day and a good weekend.